just kind of interesting because the women's basketball world is more involved with social media than maybe any sport I've seen. I'm sure all sports are like that, but at least it feels like it's a storyline more in the women's game, and that players are very attuned or reacting to things. Now, sometimes that can be detrimental in the sense of you shouldn't be so consumed with what people say on the internet or whatever. And then sometimes it's just all in good fun. And I would say the latter when it comes to Sophie Cunningham, because I'm not worried about her getting in her own head. But it does, the recent example, bring up
Stop talking about CC Challenge impossible. The fan criticism hit hard, targeting Sophie Cunningham directly. But Sophie wasn't backing down, not for a second. Her immediate fiery clapback reverberated across social media, instantly going viral and sparking a massive debate among women's basketball fans. It was a direct shot, a public defense of her own narrative against what she clearly perceived as unfair, relentless scrutiny. The online world erupted, forcing everyone to pick a side in this unexpected, high-stakes internet showdown. This wasn't just a casual post. It was a statement that ignited a firestorm, putting Sophie squarely in the spotlight as she pushed back against the wave of digital negativity.
This is Sophie Cunningham, because I'm not worried about her getting in her own head. But it does, the recent example, bring up an interesting conversation to me, because Sophie had talked about Caitlin Clark turning her down for Project B on her podcast, and somebody on the Overtime Women's Basketball page wrote, Sophie Cunningham stopped talking about CC Challenge, impossible. And then Sophie said, people stop talking to me about her, impossible. And, I think both of these things are true. If you look at the Project B comment itself, you can't really say like people were talking to her about it as much as she volunteered it. Her co-host did mention Caitlin's name.
The entire controversy ignited from a seemingly innocent podcast segment on Project B. Sophie had discussed Caitlin Clark turning down an invitation to appear on their show. This wasn't an attack, but a simple disclosure, yet it became the spark that lit the fuse of online outrage. The discussion itself felt like a casual mention, almost an aside, but in the highly sensitive realm of women's basketball social media, every word concerning star players, especially Caitlin Clark, carries immense weight. It created an immediate ripple effect, setting the stage for the fan backlash that was soon to follow across various platforms.
About it as much as she volunteered it. Her co-host did mention Caitlin's name.
All these leagues are great, but at the end of the day, like if you don't have the W, you don't have the platform.
Right.
So you don't have the eyes, you don't have the recognition.
That's right, Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
You have the W.
Yeah. I tried to get her to like play in this one. She's like, no.
So the co-host, Wes Wilson, I believe his name is, he brought that up. He did bring it up. So Sophie didn't bring it up out of nowhere, but she took it another step further by revealing that, Caitlin is not going to play in Project B. And it does feel like there's like a moment of tea basically weekly on that podcast. So I think both things are true.
Crucially, Sophie Cunningham wasn't the one who initially brought up Caitlin Clark's name during that podcast segment. It was actually her co-host, Wes Wilson, who introduced Clark into the conversation. This detail is vital because it shifts some of the initial responsibility away from Sophie, painting a clearer picture of how the topic organically surfaced. It wasn't a pre-planned attack or an unprovoked mention by Sophie. Rather, she was responding to a question or comment initiated by someone else, which then led to her subsequent revelation about Project B. This nuance often gets lost in the rapid-fire spread of social media narrative.
It does feel like there's like a moment of tea basically weekly on that podcast. So I think both things are true. Sophie is smart enough to realize how much she's benefited by being in proximity to Caitlin Clark. She's got all these endorsements deals now. Once she stepped up for Caitlin that one time, the floodgates opened, and she is not shy about discussing it or talking about her or bringing it up or any of those things. Like she gets it and she understands it, and she gets the business. Look at what she's doing now on the side there. At the same time, people are going to bring
However, Sophie then took the discussion a significant step further. After her co-host mentioned Clark, Sophie elaborated by revealing that Caitlyn would not be playing in Project B. This specific piece of information, while seemingly benign, was the real catalyst for the tea moment, transforming a casual mention into a genuine news item within the WNBA social sphere. This revelation wasn't just an answer, it was an exclusive detail that suddenly elevated the conversation, making it more personal and inevitably more controversial. It was the moment a simple discussion turned into something much bigger, drawing immediate attention.
On the side there. At the same time, people are going to bring up Caitlin Clark in every single interview. I mean, of course. I mean, that's everybody who interviews anybody on the Indiana Fever or anybody in the Caitlin Clark orbit knows if they get the right Caitlin Clark quote, that can explode. So, it's almost like a unspoken rule. They have to know at this point it's going to be mentioned, and that is part of the game too. So there's just no escaping it, whether it's being brought up by somebody because they know it brings them attention, or it's being brought up to someone because the other person.
This Project B podcast has an almost weekly reputation for dishing out tea or dramatic moments. It's a platform where listeners half expect some form of revelation or controversy to unfold, making the Caitlin Clark mention perfectly align with its established brand. This expectation means that any discussion involving a high-profile player like Clark is inherently magnified, destined to become a talking point. The show's format primes its audience for such disclosures, which explains why Sophie's comments, even if unintended as a bombshell, quickly became one in that particular environment.
It's almost like a unspoken rule. They have to know at this point it's going to be mentioned, and that is part of the game too. So there's just no escaping it, whether it's being brought up by somebody because they know it brings them attention, or it's being brought up to someone because the other person knows it's going to get attention. There's going to be a Caitlin Clark mention. Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark seem to have a really good relationship. Obviously, Sophie is very good at navigating the media game. Obviously, Sophie is not shy about speaking her mind, but all this stuff gets easier when
the savage fan criticism truly went viral when a specific post appeared on the Overtime Women's Basketball page. It directly challenged Sophie Cunningham with the blunt statement, "Sophie Cunningham, stop talking about CC Challenge impossible." This direct, almost taunting comment was the public accusation that sparked the entire defending clapback narrative. It perfectly encapsulated the frustration some fans felt, believing Sophie was overly focused on Clark, turning a simple online observation into a widespread meme and a direct confrontation, setting the stage for Sophie's fiery response.
Obviously, Sophie is not shy about speaking her mind, but all this stuff gets easier when it gets back to being about basketball and things that are happening in the game, and when it's a long off season and Caitlin Clark didn't play for so long, and Sophie and Caitlin Clark were both out and on the sidelines, it just leads to other stuff that can be brought up and talked about that isn't quite as focused. But Sophie clapped back. She has the right to clap back. Sophie also talks about Caitlin Clark a lot. She has the right to do that. She's her teammate. She's her friend. She gets the game, and it kind of.
Sophie Cunningham's viral response was swift and equally direct. She fired back, mirroring the fans' phrasing with her own, saying, "People stop asking, talking to me about her impossible." This retort wasn't just a defensive statement, it was a direct challenge to the narrative, pushing back against the idea that she was solely responsible for the constant Clark mentions. Her words resonated powerfully because they spoke to a shared experience of public figures constantly being asked about the biggest star, flipping the script back onto the relentless media and fan obsession. It was a mic drop moment.
So long, and Sophie and Caitlin Clark were both out and on the sidelines. It just leads to, other stuff that can be brought up and talked about that isn't quite as focused. But, Sophie clapped back. She has the right to clap back. Sophie also talks about Caitlin Clark a lot. She has the right to do that. She's her teammate. She's her friend. She gets the game, and it kind of is what it is. So I think on this count, both the commenter is correct. Sophie's going to bring up Caitlin a lot. So what? And Sophie is right. People are going to bring up Caitlin a lot to her. So what?
What's fascinating about this whole exchange is that in a way, both Sophie and the fan commenter are undeniably correct. Sophie does talk about Caitlin Clark frequently, acknowledging her importance and impact. Yet, it's also true that media, fans, and interviewers constantly bring up Caitlin Clark to Sophie, almost making it an unavoidable topic. This dual truth creates a unique dynamic, where the criticism, while sharp, misses the full context of the media ecosystem. It highlights the complex interplay between a public figure's statements and the public's insatiable demand for specific narratives and topics. Sophie Cunningham displays a sharp understanding of the business side of professional sports and media. She's smart enough to recognize the immense benefits she's gained from being in proximity to Caitlin Clark. This isn't just about friendship, it's about strategic positioning in a highly competitive media landscape. Her awareness of how her association with Clark boosts her own profile and opportunities underscores her savvy, demonstrating that her actions are often calculated, not just spontaneous reactions. She knows the game, both on and off the court, and how to navigate it for maximum impact. The floodgates opened for Sophie Cunningham's career after she famously stepped up to defend Caitlin Clark in a previous incident. That moment cemented her as a strong, outspoken ally, and it was a turning point that brought her significant media attention, endorsements, and increased visibility. This history shows that her connection to Clark isn't new. It's a well-established dynamic that has consistently led to positive outcomes for Sophie, reinforcing why she continues to engage with the topic. Her past actions set a precedent for her current willingness to speak out. Sophie is unequivocally not shy about discussing Caitlin Clark, whether it's bringing her up herself, engaging in conversations about her, or responding to direct questions. She embraces the topic openly. This willingness to lean into the narrative rather than shy away from it is part of her distinctive public persona. She understands the value of visibility and engagement, and she uses her platform effectively to stay relevant and connected to the biggest story in women's basketball. Her candor is a defining trait that keeps her consistently in the public eye. The intense media obsession surrounding Caitlin Clark is a major factor in this whole scenario. Every interviewer, whether for a major network or a niche podcast, knows that a compelling Caitlin Clark quote is pure gold. It's a guaranteed way to generate clicks, views, and viral moments. This understanding creates an environment where Clark's name is constantly sought after, making it nearly impossible for anyone in her orbit, like Sophie, to avoid the subject. The media landscape itself is designed to amplify her presence, often at the expense of other topics. It has become almost an unspoken rule within the WNBA media circuit. If you're interviewing someone connected to Caitlin Clark, her name is gonna come up. Interviewers know this, and the players and personalities involved are well aware that they will be asked about her. This pervasive expectation means that discussions about Clark are less about individual choice and more about navigating an inevitable part of the media game. It's a reality everyone accepts, shaping how conversations unfold and driving the constant mentions that spark fan reaction. Ultimately, the mention of Caitlin Clark, regardless of who initiates it, serves a dual purpose. It generates attention. Whether Sophie Cunningham brings her up because she knows it will get eyes on her content, or an interviewer brings it up to Sophie because they know it will get attention for their platform, the outcome is the same. It's a symbiotic relationship where proximity to Clark guarantees engagement. This mutual benefit explains why the topic remains so prevalent, creating a self-sustaining cycle of discussion and virality around her name. Despite the online drama, Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark appear to share a genuinely good relationship. This underlying friendship and teammate bond are crucial context for understanding the situation. Their rapport suggests that Sophie's discussions aren't born of malice or exploitation, but rather from a place of familiarity and support. This personal connection tempers the potential negativity, implying that much of the fan criticism misses the genuine foundation of their interactions. It's not just a business relationship, it's a personal one too. Sophie is exceptionally good at navigating the complex and often brutal media game. She understands how to speak her mind while still maintaining her public image and strategic positioning. Her ability to deliver punchy, memorable lines like her clapback demonstrates a keen sense of timing and audience. She's not just reacting, she's performing a masterclass in media engagement, using controversies to further her own narrative and keep herself relevant in the ever-evolving world of sports commentary and social media. Her media savvy is a key asset. The long offseason also plays a significant role in fueling these non-basketball related controversies. When Caitlin Clark wasn't actively playing and both Sophie and Clark were off the court, the media landscape naturally shifted its focus. Without on-court action to discuss, narratives tend to drift towards personal interactions, podcast comments, and social media spats. This void creates fertile ground for other stuff to be brought up and talked about, elevating minor incidents into major headlines in the absence of actual game-time content. Sophie Cunningham has every right to clap back at criticism, especially when it directly targets her public persona and actions. In the often vicious world of social media, standing up for oneself is not just a personal choice, but often a necessity. Her response was a powerful assertion of her agency, refusing to be silenced or dictated to by anonymous online commenters. It demonstrated her resilience and willingness to engage directly with her detractors, reinforcing her image as an outspoken and authentic voice in the women's basketball community. Furthermore, Sophie has every right to talk about Caitlin Clark. She's her teammate, her friend, and someone who operates within the same professional sphere. To suggest she shouldn't discuss Clark is to ignore the organic interactions and relationships that exist within a team and a league. Her insights come from a place of direct experience and proximity, making her commentary valuable and legitimate. Denying her the right to speak about her colleague and friend is an unreasonable expectation that misunderstands the nature of sports community. Ultimately, this entire Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark dynamic is simply what it is. Both sides are correct in their observations. Sophie talks about Clark a lot, and people constantly bring Clark up to Sophie. It's an unavoidable aspect of being intertwined with the biggest phenomenon in women's sports. This constant interplay of discussion, attention, and occasional criticism is the new normal. It highlights how star power shapes narratives, creating an endless loop of engagement that defines the modern intersection of sports, media, and celebrity, regardless of who approves.